So in the last video, we discussed the code for the monitor, and in this one, we are going to write a code for the scoreboard. So let's begin. So I will begin with naming our class. Just a second. Okay. And I will call it scoreboard. And it should extend UVM scoreboard. Now, obviously, the very first thing I'm going to do is to do the factory registration of this component. Now, since we are done with the factory registration with this component, the next thing I'm going to do is to create an instantiation for UVM analysis import. And the reason being is that if you have watched the monitor video, we have created an instance for the UVM analysis port, and port is used to send the data, and we also used the write method for that port inside the run phase of the UVM monitor. And as you can remember in my previous video, I have discussed that I will be writing the body of this write method inside the scoreboard, and I will be using the TLM ports to maintain the communication between the monitor and the scoreboard. So since monitor will be the one which will be sending the data, I have used port right there, and here I will be receiving the data or the copy of the transaction, so I will be using the import. So there is one more change. Unlike the analysis port, which have only a single argument, that is the thing that you will be transferring, which is the transaction or the sequence item in our case, it will have two parameters. So the first parameter is same, it is the sequence item, and the second parameter should be the parent or the class to which this particular UVM analysis import belongs. And in this case, it is scoreboard. So we will write scoreboard, which is the name of this class right here. And then we will write the user defined instance name. So I will just write AI port, which basically which is a just a abbreviation of AI port, which is just an abbreviation of the analysis import or whatever. So when we are done with this, we will write a handle for the sequence item, and I will call it TR. You could call it whatever you want. So I'm just calling it by random names. In the previous class, I called it T, and in driver, I think I called it TR, so it does not matter. So the very first thing I will do is to create the constructor, and it should have two arguments. First argument should be the name, the second argument should be the UVM component. First thing I will do is to call the constructor of the parent and then pass these formal arguments. And the second thing we will do is to create an object using the new method for the UVM analysis import. And we did the similar thing back in the UVM monitor class for our UVM analysis port. So I just have to write AI port, which is the name of the instance, then new, and then first I will name the instance, and the second thing I will name is I will just refer to the parent class, which is scoreboard in our case. So after this, we are done with our just a second, it should be function. Okay, so after this we are done with our constructor. Now we will move on to uh, the next thing, which is the UVM build phase, and this time build phase is only going to be used uh, to create an object for the sequence item, and that object should be created using the create method. And unlike our previous classes like monitor and driver, in which you will be communicating with the virtual interface, thus you have to write the UVM configuration DB. You are not communicating with the interface, so you don't have to write configuration DB. So let's begin. And this one should be virtual function and it should not have any return type. It will not return anything, so it should be void. And basically every phase has the same arguments. So the very first thing is obvious, and it is to call the constructor of the parent class. And the second thing we will do is to create the object of the transaction class using the create method. Now we are done with the build phase of our scoreboard class. So let's move on to the next thing. And scoreboard, it is not a requirement for the scoreboard to have run phase, because here we are not doing anything related to timing or delays. So here what we will do, we will just mention the write method which we have used in our monitor class for our analysis port right here. So we will mention that right here. And it will not return anything, so I will write the return type to be void. Since we passed the object of the transaction which has the response from the DUT as an argument, it should have the same argument type, which is sequence item, and then you could name it anything you want. I will just call it T. So I will just pass the transaction which is received from the monitor class to this to a local variable, or not the local variable, to the sequence item handle or the object which we have declared right here in the build phase. So whatever is received will be passed to this, and of course we are receiving the response from the duty. After this, I will write a very simple checker because our design is very simple. So let's begin. So before that, first I will just write a UVM info, and I will do the same thing which I have been doing for the previous classes, is to retrieve the ID using the getTypeName method, and then I will just write the following: data is received from the monitor, and then I will give the verbosity to be UVM none, and then I will use the print method. So after printing the data or the response from the monitor, and I'm doing this just to make it ensure, just to ensure that whether the ports between the monitor and scoreboard are working or not. So after receiving the response from the driver, from the duty to monitor, then to scoreboard, it will the data will then be compared to find out whether the test is getting passed or not. So we will write a checker. So checker is going to be very simple. If the output is equals to the summation between both the inputs, then I will just write that test passed, and I will give the verbosity as UVM none because the test is essential. We have to check it, and you should not write any semicolon after UVM info. So output if output is the summation between both the inputs, then the test is passed. Else, if it is not the summation between the inputs or anything else, then it should fail, that the test is failed. And for this case, I will use the UVM error. And UVM error will have only two arguments. Oops. So if the test does not pass, it failed, obviously. So that's all. That is the basic functionality, or that is the most basic scoreboard class you could write. So it will just have the declaration of the UVM analysis import, and then we will assign object to the analysis import, and after that we will just declare the body of the write method which we used with the analysis port of the UVM monitor. And here inside this, I just wrote the checker, and I did some fancy things like, again, I will not call it fancy because it is important to observe the data which is getting received with your own eyes, and then it will just check whether the test has been passed or it failed. So in our next video, we will be moving uh, a little bit up with the hierarchy, because we will be writing an agent class, and in agent class we will be just instantiating the object of the sequencer, the driver, and the monitor, and we will also be doing the connection between their ports. So stay tuned for more. Thank you.